Die Sonne scheidet hinter dem Gebirge. In alle Täler steigt der Abend
Sarah, the warmest of welcomes to you. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you were ringing the bell at the end of your cancer radio treatment, just as I was nominating your latest recording of Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde, your second, I believe, for Gramophone magazine's Record of the Month. Now, there's something very satisfying about that timing.
Yes, there really is. I can't tell you how wonderful that made me feel when you told me this. And one needs good news in spades when one has achieved something on in a physical sense. And up to this point, really, during the last year, I haven't really had any major illnesses other than prolonged coughs and colds. So it was a major shock to the system. But one wants to get back in the saddle, one wants to get singing again, and to have one's work, especially a piece like Das Lied von der Erde that means so much, to have it recognised and appreciated by you, that means a lot.
Well, good. I know you went into the Royal Opera House to do one of their streaming events, and didn't you sing something from Das Lied there as well?
I sang the whole thing.
The whole thing.
And the Schoenberg arrangement.
Oh, wonderful. But, how was that? Because that must have been, a big ask at that time.
I felt it was important because I felt my voice was fine. Physically, I was still weak, but I know the piece so well. I know its tricks and turns. It was actually physically harder work than I thought it would be because one has the fear of all those cameras zooming around in front of you and the fact that it's being broadcast to however many people. But I knew what was more important, as I didn't want people chattering or gossiping about, can she sing anymore after cancer treatment? I thought I'll go straight in there, make or break. It'll either end my career or it'll continue it. And, that's me. I sort of like to just go straight in and deal with it because I knew vocally I'd be fine. It was just a question of whether I had the mental stamina to get through it.
Now, it's a work, Das Lied, at the very heart of any aspiring mezzo's repertoire, but it demands an inwardness and maturity of thinking to hit the spot, because it's all subtle shadings, isn't it? Challenging or what?
Yes, it's very important for me always to go back to the text to see exactly how the composer responds to it in any situation. And I've often wondered about the sort of chinoiserie, if you like, the Chineseness of it all. And there is a term for it, Orientalism. And I discovered that Mahler got to hear Chinese sounds from these cylinders that they use. I've forgotten what they're called. My daughter did tell me the other day. Those machines that you can play recorded speech on from the 18th and 19th century.
Yeah.
Certainly
Cylinders, yeah.
Cylinders, yes. There's the machine they play on. Anyway, so that is probably how. There's no definitive version from his friend. And that's how he came across quite detailed and extensive Chinese music sounds from their gamelan orchestras and Indonesian music, but particularly the Chinese sounds. And I think he's very taken with the pentatonic scale and how the depth of the timelessness of the Chinese music, of the Chinese poetry, Bi Po, the effect that had on him was was the most beautiful union.
Oh, absolutely.
At this time in his life,
Yeah.
after his daughter's death. So.
And also, the Mahler, the pantheist, this oneness with nature that he valued almost above everything else. Gosh, there's a voice for climate change, if ever there was one. That piece, particularly.
Yes, it's the nostalgia. It's the most perfect. I mean, Schubert also had it. Schubert discovered and explored this in so much of his music, especially Winterreise.
Mm-hmm.
The effect of temperature, of weather, and the soul is one with how one feels physically, and that's very much. It's meant to be Die Einsame im Herbst, actually, the first mezzo song, not Der Einsame im Herbst. He changed it.
Yeah.
But I prefer Die Einsame, obviously, being a woman. But it's very interesting how he really creates this mist, this autumn.
Extraordinary. Extraordinary when you listen to the rest of his output. It's all the more extraordinary. There's a kind of newfound delicacy. It's like watercolors after a lot of oils.
Yes, and vocally, I try very hard to make my voice do what the instruments do. And having worked with Philipp Herweger throughout my early 30s, one of the things he tried very hard is to make all singers listen to the instruments. If you have an obbligato oboist or flautist, is to match not just your voice, but your whole being has to be in tune with that instrument's phrasing, with the way it sounds, with Bach's understanding of where the rise and fall in the cadences, and so much of this is, of the recitative in Der Abschied is very much almost Bachian, is recitative style. Stieg vom Pferd und reichte ihm den Trunk des Abschieds dar. It's very simple, but actually it's not simple to sing. I just have to try and kid my brain that it's the simplest thing in the world to do, and to go back to being simple, like Bach delivery and Vladimir. Absolutely.
Well,
love that idea.
You've hit upon something there in the marrying of voice to instrumental soloists that is something that really hit me or struck me about this performance, which was recorded live in Berlin. It was a radio broadcast, and the revelation for me was Vladimir Jurowski, that is, his decision to use the radio broadcast balance to pull focus on the relationship between the instrumental and human voices. And because Mahler was very specific that the latter be a part of the orchestral canvas. Yeah. It is a symphony, after all.
Yes, it is.
And I found that a real revelation. I remember mentioning a phrase in the review from Der Einsame im Herbst, where the solo cello shrouds the voice on a particular line, and it just struck me as being extraordinary, that moment, one of many. And you came back to me in conversation and said, I worked so hard to try and not to breathe in the middle of that phrase. So there you go. It worked.
Thank you. It's do you know, Mahler's phrasing, especially in things like Urlicht from the Second Symphony or Das Kramwunderhorn, whichever version, they are cruel, these phrases. They're long, they expect you to spin the music. I don't care who did what, when, it's irrelevant to me. It's clear from the dots on the page what he wants. And it's very, very difficult to do, but I try very hard to make my voice, to make my technique do what's expected, what he wanted. And because I'm envious often of the flutes and their circular breathing.
Yes,
and the oboes, I just think, I wish I could do it. Gulp, gulp. It really wouldn't do at all. But I do look at them and I just think that's extraordinary, especially the oboe solo
Oh,
in
goodness.
Urlicht.
Yes.
That's just
Yes.
extraordinary.
Yes. And of course, Vladimir would absolutely have adored your connection with the letter of the text because,
Yes. Hope so.
oh, he's such a special talent, a very wise old head on young shoulders.
Yes, I feel very blessed to have done the Hamlet with him, the Brett Dean Hamlet as
Oh,
well.
yes, indeed.
Every day he never lost his patience because we all felt like dunderheads half the time because this music is more difficult than even we imagined it would be. Even the amazing Barbara Hannigan was a little confounded from day to day. She said, let me have a think about that. That it was, if she's the sort of the star of contemporary music and she was finding it difficult, then we all managed to breathe a sigh of relief that we didn't feel as stupid as we felt. But Vladimir never lost any patience and lost his temper with any of us. He just found another way of trying to help us get the rhythm and whatever.
It was unique in my experience when I first met him. I met him at his request, which was very unusual. I don't review live music now at all. I only review recorded music. I think I know too many people, Sarah.
Yeah.
And the understanding is, even with gramophone, that if I don't care for something, I'll pass it on to someone else if I know that person, because I don't want to go down that road.
No.
And I got this message saying that he would like to meet me. He'd been reading some of my Glyndebourne reviews when he took over there, and he wanted to meet me and Michael Kennedy were the two people he wanted to meet. So I was very flattered by that. But the first conversation I had with him, when he liked the fact that I, as a man of the theatre, and that understood the theatrical elements of opera. But the first time I spoke to him, he used the word, quite naturally in conversation, coquettish. And I've never heard any Englishman ever use that word in the course of an ordinary conversation. And I just thought, this man he was, 30-something, and there wasn't a story he didn't know, there wasn't a piece of music he didn't know. Extraordinary scholar.
And his children are also quite brilliant.
Really?
They've inherited his curiosity and his awareness in different ways. They will turn into extraordinary adults. They already are extraordinary.
And of course, they have to be
individual
in that company, wouldn't they? Sarah, I vividly remember your breakthrough performance in Nick Heitner's production of Xerxes, Handel's Xerxes at ENO, 1998.
Yes.
Doesn't seem that long ago, really.
Yes, it's the year I got married as well. So we're just celebrating our 22nd wedding anniversary.
But to us, it's kind of, it's yesterday, really. I reckon I can always tell within 5 seconds if someone belongs on a stage or not. And I remember you so clearly in that production. And then as I saw more of your work on stage, that feeling was endorsed. Did you feel comfortable on stage from the very beginning?
Yes, I did. It took me a long time to get on the operatic stage in a title role of any sort, because I'd spent 5 years in the BBC Singers. So emerging on the operatic scene at 29, 30, you'll get a lot of people in the business asking, where have you been? Do we trust you? You haven't done an opera course anywhere. So that's not for want of trying. I didn't get accepted on British Youth Opera course or NY National NOS, National Opera Studio, and I tried several times. It just didn't seem to be coming together. So 95, 3 years before that, I did the Sertogenbosch singing competition and came second. And that's when I started to find my confidence, find my feet in the operatic repertoire, because it was enormous. We had to prepare 10 arias. And 5 oratorio pieces, which was easy, and 5 songs, which was easy. So it was a really wonderful singing competition. There was Ellie Ameling was on the panel, and she remembers me, and she still talks when I go to Holland to do recitals. She always comes.
Oh, wonderful.
And she says to me, my favourite female leader recitalist. Yes, you are. And
There's a compliment coming from her.
I know. I'm flattered. I was a bit boasting saying that now, but but she's. I was very touched by her interest in me. I remember singing a Poulenc song, and she was grinning from ear to ear during it because I inhabited it.
Yes.
Les gars qui vont à la fête, and I did a few little gestures of the boys throwing their drinks and it just seemed to fit. I hadn't planned to do it. It just fitted that song. You've got to move a bit.
Yes.
And I think she felt, she feels natural on stage. I can tell she's natural. Because if you plan these things, it's not going to work. That's my motto. If you can have an overall plan, I'm going to go from A to B. But if you start, in my case, if I start working out how I'm going to walk there, it all goes horribly wrong. I just have to think in character, and that's the same with Mahler das Lied. If I'm thinking the right thoughts, am I in the right place? I don't need to plan.
Yes.
In fact, it's dangerous to plan how I'm going to sing the next phrase because it won't work because I'll get worried about it.
Yes.
So I think certainly Der Einsame im Herbst, that first note, Herbstleben, it's very important that I don't worry about that first note. Just take a last-minute breath and exhale, and the Herbst will happen.
Yes.
It's the same with acting. It's if you're in the right headspace, I'm sure you know, you're in the right headspace, it'll just happen.
It's funny, when as you talk about, even in recital, there is an element of performance, obviously. And maybe that's why on the one occasion I think I slightly upset you in a review by suggesting that you were behind a music stand when I didn't want you to be.
Was for Das Lied, but it was being recorded.
No, it wasn't Das Lied. It was just a regular recital at somewhere like Cheltenham or somewhere.
Oh, I see.
And I know you had a really hectic schedule at the time. And the only reason I mentioned it was simply because with someone like you, anything that comes between us and you,
yes. Right.
is an impediment. Do you know what I mean?
I do know that. I'm hugely aware of that. It is my ambition to sing even Das Lied from memory, because of course I know it backwards, but there's something about those entrances in Der Abschied that fill me with horror if I came in on the wrong where Der Bach singt, da 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 da. And I can trust most conductors, but I have done Das Lied with a conductor who did not give me the final Ewigs, Ewigs.
Oh.
I nearly died.
Oh.
I thought, well, I don't know where I am. And that was one of the early.
Oh, frightening.
I think I now know where I am, but oh dear. And I thought, thanks for nothing.
I'm going cold just thinking about it.
Thanks for nothing.
Mind you, I can talk, Sarah. I mean, I use cue cards for doing stage interviews, and because I'm responsible, rather as a conductor is in a concerto performance, I'm responsible for where this goes.
Yes, no, you're quite right. In fact, for recital, unless it's a new piece like a contemporary piece that I haven't had for very long, I think one should try and do all the standard repertoire from memory. I realise, looking back, that I think I was probably packing too much in. Because I was just very excited to be offered this, that, and the other. And actually, I think that's possibly one of the reasons why singers suffer burnout, or I don't know why I got cancer, no idea. But one of the reasons is that stress can be one of the things, aging as well. But there's nothing in my genetic. I had a gene test. There's nothing in my genes that has. Nobody in my entire history has had. I have had cancer, my mother, but there's nothing in my genes that is telling me I'm going to have cancer. So I'm thinking it might be something to do with stress.
Well, stress is responsible for more than we know. It is scary, and I used to be very neurotic about myself, and I've tried very, very hard to change that, because it doesn't do any good. It really doesn't.
In which case, if you are worried, as a good reason, maybe one is taking on too much, and I'm talking about myself, not anybody else. I also look at wonderful singers and think, why they're using the music. They surely know these whatever songs.
Yes.
And it's often just because it's a live broadcast. And,
Yes, of course.
I remember the CD I recorded live. You were there, actually. I've forgotten the name of it. With Eugene Asty, we did in St Johnston's Square. And
yes.
Jurowski's The Exquisite Hour.
Yes.
And I did that with music because it was a CD.
Of course.
And I couldn't keep going back over it if I made a dare.
Well, that I completely understand.
Yes, but apart from that, I think, yes, I do try not to use them.
What do you want from a director on stage? You've had ongoing relationships, some very distinguished directors like David McVicar, and I see that Glyndebourne has been free streaming the Giulio Cesare, which that was a memorable first night.
Yes,
my goodness me, in every respect.
We sort of, the week leading up to it, people start coming in from other rehearsals during the stage rehearsals, and they sit in the auditorium, and you get a feel of how it's being received just from one's colleagues, and the excitement in the week leading up to it was like, oh my God, what have we just seen? What is that? From everyone's aria. It's not just mine and Danny's, but from Pat Barden's and from Aquila, from Chris Maltman. There's just so much excitement and the gorgeous colours of those curtains, and it all, especially Vartacito, seemed to be the one that people were just going, what have I just seen?
Yes.
And it was such a thrill that preceding week, and then the opening night. The dress rehearsal was hugely well received because, of course, one has one's colleagues there, and they just went bonkers.
Yes.
So it was a very special time.
Yeah, I mean, there have been so many memorable Handel first nights at Glyndebourne. I don't know what it is about that composer and the house.
Yeah.
But Theodora, for example, with the Peter Sellers production with Lorraine Hunt-Lieberson,
Indeed,
which is imprinted on my memory as strongly as the Giulio Cesare.
Yes.
And
I was there during that as well.
Were you?
Yes, for another opera. So it was phenomenal to see them. Again, we would just pop in to the rehearsals, and the orchestra of the Adrian Lightman players Nettie would come into the courtyard cafe in tears, saying, I can't play when she sings.
Yeah.
And as Rosie steps the morn, yes. So they were all just in tears.
You used the word a while back about inhabiting parts and inhabiting music, and that's what separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls. And I mean, coming back to that question about what do you want from a director, I suppose there's another word, security, to feel that they know what they're doing and you know what and trust. Am I right?
A general plan is a good idea. I have started rehearsals with directors who just say, oh, well, we'll just go with what you've got to offer. And I thought, oh, that sends chills down my spine.
Yeah.
Because, like most actors, I've got something to offer if you give me the tram lines, if you give me the map, you give me the route from A to B. I don't mean literally like penciling it in. I mean, if you just tell me, we're aiming for that, for him or her to be in that state of mind at that point, and off you go. And then what Dave McVicar does is that at some point he'll say, well, we need to get over there because that's where so-and-so comes in. And I would like more frivolity from you, or I would like you to be a little more focused on a certain aspect of this, that, and the other. So there's a sort of tweaking, and a sort of general shaping. And he's got a plan in his mind about what's going on, but he's more than happy for me to add all sorts of ingredients. For example, the opening of the opera where I stomped down the stage, that was all me. He just said, let's start the opera. I mean, from the moment Cesare enters in rehearsal. And I saw he had a a director's chair there. That was the only prop on the stage in rehearsal. So I know that important people, when they think they're important, sit down and everybody else stands up. I've seen it with Trump and Angela Merkel, that famous picture. But of course, that's recent. But I knew that that was a thing. So I thought, right, well, he's got to sit down and everyone else can just run around him.
Yes.
And so I just walked around, looked around, and I sat down for the beginning of the opera. Of my role, and it was harder when I got the breastplate, because the thing, when I sat down,
it nearly choked you.
Resting on my legs, it hit my chin, so I had to find a way of leaning back slightly. But it was David loved that.
Well, I can remember it distinctly. You see, even now, I can remember you storming in and sitting down.
Yes.
So there you are, power.
Yes. So those are the kind of things.
Yes.
I remember John Copley also said to me ages ago when we did Ariodante at City Opera, he said, very important that you have great clothes management, be it a cloak or a coat, that you deal with it in a way that they do in the portraits when you see them in the National Portrait Gallery or wherever. I know that they're posing or on a horse or whatever, but they've got the coat or the something or other, whatever, the sword, just right.
Yeah.
And a lot of what you're doing when you're singing an aria, more or less standing still, is getting your best and most powerful pose. So I was aware that that coat was a thing, and when I sat down in the chair, that it hadn't to be all rucked up somewhere.
Yes.
That I had to somehow get that coat comfortable, and I was just aware that these things you learn from very experienced directors. That you just take them on board and they just become part of your general, okay, so this is how I deal with that. This is how I deal with a stray piece of furniture on the stage that's never been there before but could be a serious risk. Or the handle that comes off in your hand and you have to get rid of it so that nobody notices. The sort of, what do you do with it? You just have to deal with it.
We're in the realms of the play that went wrong now,
yes,
aren't we?
We are.
But everything you're saying is testament to the fact that you are a stage animal, and that is patently obvious. What is your happy place repertoire-wise, Sarah? I mean, I'm probably asking the obvious here because one hears you in Gerontius, The Dream of Gerontius, or Das Lied von der Erde. One hears you in a lot of French roles, and the two Didos, Purcells and Berlioz. But where do you feel, are there any composers you feel especially comfortable
Well, yes,
with?
Handel, obviously. And the reason, I think, is that he develops the characters so well and with such incredible insight. And when I say pathos, I don't mean in any syrupy way. He just seems to get to the depth of the character. So any music that honestly brings out the depth of a character, La Principessa from Suor Angelica, for example, is a role I'd love to have a go at. I just pray I've got a bottom G sharp that's strong enough.
Oh, it's a great role, isn't it?
Oh yes, now that's one I really want to get my teeth into. You know, something that is not a caricature. I hate these caricatures. I want them to be real people who had a real effect on people's lives.
Did you see Richard Jones' production?
Yes.
Wasn't that revelatory?
Extraordinary.
I've never seen the piece work like that.
No, I haven't
ever.
either. No.
And don't expect to see it work as well again. I just thought it was.
He's so clever.
Oh, my goodness!
He manages, even if I don't agree with him, and he knows I didn't agree with a lot of his Ariodante.
Yeah.
And I begged for a different costume because I thought I looked like a dumpling in this woolly jumper. And I don't look like a dumpling, but I was made to look like one. And I begged for some kind of a simple black suit with or without a jacket, just something that would give me a masculine shape. And no, it wasn't forthcoming. So I got quite upset about it. And we all looked like hell in that production. But then that was sort of the deal, you know. That was, you weren't meant to be showy in any way. It was meant to be simple people. But I love listening to him talk. I love the way his mind works, and I love his views politically and about life. They all make sense to me.
Well, he's very. I remember doing an interview with him once, and it took me most of the interview to actually interview him, because he was fascinated that I'd been in the Archers when I was a boy, and he'd done his homework, so he turned things around. And I'd written a piece about him where I said he'd be very good casting for the child catcher in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. He never forgot that. You see, it's the kind of quirky thing he'd latch onto. But I remember saying to him about his production of Hansel and Gretel, how the dream pantomime.
Extra.
I said that idea of serving the children, these creatures of the night, serving them a banquet, you know. And he looked at me, and I said, it's such a wonderful idea. And he said, well, when people are hungry, they dream of food.
Yes.
There you
But
are.
it was the elegance of just lifting off those silver
Yes,
domes.
exactly.
God, for me, that was the most... I mean, it just made me weep when I saw that. I just thought, that is so beautiful.
At his best, he is a special director. Now, I want to come to Fricka in The Ring. And funnily enough, Richard, one of the things he revealed to me, which I thought was extraordinary, much later on after his very controversial staging of The Ring, he said, I should never have done that piece.
Oh.
He said, because I so despise all the characters in it that I kind of wanted to belittle them, which is where the idea for the production came from. And he said, and I realised too late in the day that you cannot do that because the music tells you otherwise for a start.
It does. I mean, I liked his Tweedledum and Tweedledee version of the Giants.
Yes.
But that was the most memorable thing for me from Das Rheingold, which is all I saw of that Ring.
Yeah. Now, Fricka, I mean, she can be so misunderstood, can't she?
She can. I mean, ultimately, she comes in with concealed silver guns in her about her skirts and her lawyer's training. I think I bear those two things in mind, that she's the only thing that would disarm her is if he turned around and said, I love you, darling, and I'll never sleep with another woman again or a goddess again. That would totally throw her. She wouldn't believe him, but she might actually believe it. Unfortunately, he's made a pact where he's moving somewhere else away from her. And like any woman in any marriage where you have different goals, what can you do? You either bend that person to your will, and in which case you have a terrible relationship, or you go away.
Yes.
She didn't have the choice, really.
Yeah. Yes. She always tells it like it is, which is what I like about her. She
can be charming. So
yes.
That's the thing that is not often done with Fricka. I can't bear it when they come on like Haridans right from the start. You just think, oh God, we're going to have half an hour of shrieking, and I can't bear it. So she's got to be many layered and real. It's actually. There are elements of so many characters that one could use for this. There's a bit of Miss Jean Brodie.
Yes.
There's also the seductiveness of Titania, Judi Dench. There's a certain twinkly steeliness in her eye, and there's a real vulnerability. She's weak around him. She's got great ideas when she's in the next door room, but when she comes in, she feels she can't say things in the right order. But she's highly intelligent. And I often think directors just have her down as the troublesome wife.
Well, they don't want to cast you then, in that case.
No, they don't.
I love the fact that you go in so well prepared, and just to hear you talk about these characters, no wonder you got on with David McVicar.
Yes.
Because he's not the easiest person in the world to get on with, but we both love his work.
Yes, he's never edgy with us musicians and singers and dancers. It's only the stage management he gets a bit short with, and of course journalists and people who might misunderstand him. He adores you, Ed, by the way, but he trusts you. But he can't bear being misunderstood. And another thing that drove him bonkers was the Agrippina we did in another opera house, not the ENO production, but another opera house. We did it. They produced a program where they likened each character to a person from Dynasty or Dallas, I forget. He went, I have never seen such an explosion. It was like, well, yes, obviously there's an allusion to it, but let's not be too literal about it. And so this program was being literal. And it drove, I've never seen an explosion like it.
Yes, he's good at explosions.
Yeah.
You've mentioned La Principessa in Puccini's Suor Angelica. Are there roles that have tempted you where you've not yet ventured and would love to venture? Or I remember you mentioning to me once Bluebeard's Castle of Bartók. Yes.
Oh, I would definitely have done that if it didn't have that wretched top C.
Right.
It's very distressing that he wrote that, quite frankly.
The Fifth Door.
Yes, I know, because it's the most glorious moment. But I've only ever had a Baroque top C, which is like a soprano-y. I do one in the Scena di Berenice by Haydn. In fact, I sing a C sharp in that. But it's sort of Baroque, and I don't stay on it very long. I've got to do it a couple of times. But I certainly couldn't open-throated sing that. That physically the highest I can go is a B flat B, and I just thought, no.
What a shame.
What if I went for that and nothing happened?
Oh, I mean, it's the moment, isn't it?
It couldn't happen. So,
yeah.
But the rest of the role is perfect.
It's often sung by mezzos. People like
Michel de Young sings it brilliantly.
Yeah, and Waltraud Meyer has sung it as well. Yes. I think with people who've gone up to the soprano repertoire from the mezzo repertoire.
Yes.
When you're not performing, Sarah, what makes your heart sing? I mean, we've all been experiencing this terrifying, and you have been having a worse experience than all of us, but we've all been having a bad experience of being of this time in the world, and it's enabled us all, in a sense, to take stock and see the things that we perhaps took for granted and. Yes. The things that we're missing and value so much, and live performing is one, and certainly watching live performers for me.
I've been doing a lot of that. Yes,
is tough. Just to be in the same room with live performers, I miss desperately, more than I can say.
I'm sure.
But what have you found consolation in this time when you've not been performing?
Well,
apart from your daughter, obviously.
Yes, a totally wonderful child, wonderful to be around, fantastic positive energy she has. I have not been, during my cancer confinement, I have not been listening to live musical performances. I found it too, like you say, too distressing. I couldn't sing, my throat went dry and swollen during chemotherapy. And I thought, well, just don't sing then, you know. So I watched lots of plays and I listened, because my eyes hurt. I had very bad headaches due to chemotherapy. So I listened to podcasts of books being read and books about plays of D.H. Lawrence, The White Peacock. But the one that I particularly remember is the Harvey Weinstein investigation by Ronan Farrow, which he was reading on a podcast. It was extraordinary. I've never heard anything like it. The sort of the way he was hounded for following Weinstein and revealing all his nefarious dealings and awful covering up of everything. And the worst thing of all the news corporations hiding what they knew, and of course it's come back on them in some way. And great that it's been vindicated after all this time. And those actors that called him God, you know, all of them.
Yes.
And all of those who knew because their friends had told them, you know, may they eat humble pie, as it were.
Yes.
But I think it's been a huge change, this I've been reflecting on my business and how I've often said, oh, there hasn't been that much going on in our business, but actually there has. There has been a lot of intimidation. It might not be sexual predation, but there has been an awful lot of bullying going on stage from both conductors and directors. And you often see wonderful people like Jean Rigby. How could you make her cry? Anyone who makes Jean Rigby cry ought to be sent to hell, in my book. And I won't say who did, but it's not on. It's just not on.
Yes.
And it's very hard to know what to say when it's not you. If it's me and someone does that to me, I've walked out of rehearsals 4 times now. I've stomped off. I'm not having that. I'm not being spoken to like that. And then I remember meeting Henry Waddington on my way out of a room, stomping out, going into the ladies and kicking the bins. And he said, "Oh, what's up? What's the matter with Sarah?" I've had enough. I had enough. So I didn't want to be rude to anyone in the room. I didn't want to sort of explode in the room and behave badly.
Yeah.
Because I was so angry. So I just thought, I will go and have an explosion in the ladies' toilets, and hopefully there won't be anybody in there who has a freak out. But it was the best way for me to get rid of my outrage.
Yeah.
Often it was deserved, sometimes it wasn't. I mean, sometimes the tension builds up in a room and one person isn't playing ball. I don't mind being pushed. I love being pushed. It's not because I'm uncomfortable. It's because somebody's been rude. Yeah.
So are you, I mean, when the day comes, as we hope it will, maybe next year, are you looking forward to getting back on a stage or a recital platform again? And have you got irons in the fire, as it were? Everything's been postponed and rescheduled.
Well, no. I mean, there's the Oedipus Rex at Dutch National Opera. I hope that happens. Who knows?
What a piece.
March.
What a piece.
At the Elbphilharmonie, I'm singing it there in concert.
Fantastic.
Hopefully, I've got some Gerontiuses at the Berlin Philharmonie with Simon Rattle. Who knows? I hope so. Yeah. Who knows? And there's, of course, the revival of Hamlet at the Met with the same cast. Yes. But there are a few other irons in the fire I won't be allowed to talk about yet. And two are new roles. Wow. They're not, title roles or anything, but they are interesting roles. Oh. And I once drifted the idea of me singing Principessa to Tony Pappano, and he changed the subject. So I think I might waft it again.
Oh, do.
But I think I can find the steeliness in my voice, in the lower part of the voice.
You see, he probably just, some people probably just don't think of you in the Italian repertoire.
Yes, but I've sung the Romeo, of course.
Yes, but I suppose.
And Maria Stuarda.
Well, I mean, you keep at it.
I will.
So we're all hopeful, and yes, I think there will be a vaccine very soon, miraculously.
Yeah.
And
the only way.
Yes,
it's the only way.
It's the only way.
Yeah.
And hopefully all of us can get back on a stage in some shape or form. Sarah, it's an absolute joy always to talk to you. And we could go on for 4 hours, and there are probably fans out there that wish we would. But maybe we'll do it again another time.
Lovely to chat, Ed.
And you. Take great care.
Thank you, you too.